Hello and welcome to this talk about occupational therapy here at the University of Worcester. I'm going to go through a few different things, different aspects of the course and a little bit about occupational therapy itself, which will hopefully give you a better feel for what we do here at the university when we're working with the occupational therapy students. My name is Sophie, I am the admissions tutor for occupational therapy and I am also one of the senior lecturers in occupational therapy. So if you choose to come to the University of Worcester, choose to apply to the university, you will certainly see my name on various bits of paperwork. Okay, so why occupational therapy? As you might imagine, the tutors on the occupational therapy degree course, we're all a little bit biased because we are all occupational therapists by profession, and we all think it's a pretty amazing profession to go into. So it's great that you're listening to this talk now. Whether you're starting to wonder if you want to do occupational therapy or actually you've researched lots about it already and you're definite that this is what you want to do, we're really pleased that you're here to listen to this talk and hopefully attend one of our open days or come along to one of our twilight events that we'll be running so that you can find out more about studying for occupational therapy and is it the right thing for you, because we can recommend it as much as we want, but you've also got to make sure it's the right thing for you. So what do occupational therapists do? Well, there's lots of things that occupational therapists do, but some of the key points that you might want to think about and take away with you is that it's very much about helping people, working with people to assist them to have lives, live lives of meaning, doing the things that they need and want to be able to do. There'll be lots of things that you will have all needed to do today before you get to watching this talk, or things that you wanted to do or perhaps want to do after this talk. So actually, how can you achieve those things, or what if something was making it difficult to achieve those things? Occupational therapists want to work with people to enable them to achieve those things. You can find occupational therapists working in health promotion, so it's an area that perhaps is something to start thinking about, something perhaps you're less aware of. It's not something perhaps you hear talked about so often for occupational therapy, and thinking also as well about preventing ill health. Occupational therapists working with populations as well as individuals. Can work autonomously or work as part of a team, and absolutely can work across the lifespan. And the example I often give is that during my years working in practice, before I came to working at universities, the youngest person I worked with was 6 months old. There was a little girl who had Down syndrome when I was working with children, and the oldest person I've worked with was 98. Who was a gentleman who was struggling with some of the things that he needed to do in terms of getting in and out of the bath for a wash, safely. He had carers to support him, but it was still a bit of a struggle for them both. And also making a cup of tea, a hot snack, different things like that. So I was working with him so that we could work out together how was he going to be able to manage to carry on doing these things that he needed to do. And he wanted to do, he wanted a cup of tea. So you absolutely, one of the many excellent things about working as an occupational therapist is this opportunity to work across the lifespan. And you may already have an idea of an age group that you think you might want to work with, but I always challenge students and say, often students come in saying, I want to work with X population, and then they go on work placements and they come back saying, oh no, actually I think I want to work with them, or I think I want to work with that other group of people, or I want to work with individuals experiencing this, that or the other. You never quite know. So where do occupational therapists work? I'm sure if you're watching this talk, you might have a few ideas. The usual places that people tend to think of occupational therapists working are, for example, hospitals, whether it be a big acute hospitals or smaller community hospitals. And absolutely, there's lots of occupational therapists doing some fantastic work in hospitals around the country. But there's also a bit of a list there of some of the other areas, and that list is growing all the time. And you might find occupational therapists employed by the NHS. Certainly where you find them in hospitals, that'll usually be who they're employed by. Social services, social care, charities, private sector. There's all sorts of areas in which occupational therapists work. And some of the things there that might take you a little bit by surprise are things like the fire service or the ambulance service. But actually, where there are people, there are occupations, there are things, activities, occupations that they need or want to be able to do, and some things that might be making it a bit tricky for them to do that. So there is often, we can find roles for occupational therapists. So these are just 3 links I always like to mention during talks as areas that we would definitely recommend going away and having more of a look at. So the first one is the Royal College of Occupational Therapists. They're our professional body. And there's lots of really, really useful and helpful information on there about what things to look at if you're interested in studying for occupational therapy. And that is regardless of whether you want to come and study here at Worcester, or actually perhaps you're looking at a few universities, which is all good. It's always good to check out where appeals to you most and where will fit your learning. So that's all good. But regardless of where you're looking at, I would definitely recommend all three of these different websites. And that first one, Royal College of Occupational Therapists, is a really, really good one to go to find out more about the profession and more about actually what our professional body does and how it supports us as occupational therapists in practice. The Office for Students, I See the Difference website, that's got lots of information there. So actually, perhaps you're coming to this talk and you're still trying to decide, do you want to do occupational therapy, or you might be interested in another professional group as well, and you're trying to make that decision. Office for Students has information about lots of different professional groups within the allied health profession careers areas, as well as other areas as well. So definitely have a look at that one. And they've got videos there of occupational therapists, a sort of day in the life of, as well as other information you can read and other links you can follow. And the bottom one there, NHS Careers, also has information. I think there's a little bit of crossover between Office for Students and NHS Careers information, but they're definitely both worth checking out and having a look at, so that you get even more information about occupational therapy. And I would strongly recommend doing that before applying or whilst you're applying to universities, so that if you're invited to interview, you can go with as good a knowledge of occupational therapy and what occupational therapists are doing today around the UK. And you can also think globally as well, because occupational therapists can be found all around the world. Have a look at those websites, get as much information and knowledge as you can about the profession, so that you're ready and equipped both for UCAS applications or when you're invited to interview. It's a really good way to help you work out, is this the right profession for you, as well as then helping us to see that once you come for interview. So why Worcester? And many apologies to anybody who's listening to this talk and inadvertently happened to hear a dog bark in the background. One of the challenges of working from home sometimes at the moment is that occasionally you do get to hear tutors' pets either barking or animals appearing in front of the computer. So my apologies for anyone who hears that. So why Worcester? Well, we have comparatively small class sizes. They are growing a little bit. So our current first year, we have got 50 students. They started this year, 2020. So the year groups are growing, but what I would say is it still retains that real friendly approach, the supportive staff team. Absolutely, we want students to achieve their best. Not just when we're occupational therapists, we want the people we're working with to achieve to their best. We feel the same about our students. So it's very friendly student cohorts, and as I say, comparatively small. 50 isn't a massive size, might sound pretty big, but actually you still get to know fellow students pretty well. We have a very strong academic and pastoral support system, and I'll mention that again a little bit in a few slides as well, just a little bit more information about the pastoral support systems. Graduate employment is excellent, and our admissions process absolutely is inclusive, and we accept students with a wide range of qualifications, because as occupational therapists, actually we bring so many different aspects to the job, that we appreciate that in terms of looking at people's previous qualifications. We like to think, this always sounds a bit of a boast talking about these things, but we like to think we're innovative in our teaching, and always thinking of new and exciting ways to deliver materials and engage learners, because you want it to be interesting and engaging, and we do too, because it helps us to teach it. So we're always looking for interesting ways to do things, and be as inclusive as we can. And we absolutely use expert local clinicians, or clinicians actually across the country. We might use them from other areas if they're the experts in their field. And we also have service users and carers very heavily involved in the course as a whole, from the point of developing our admissions process all the way through. And that's through a team called Impact that are based at the university, and I think are about 40 members of the Impact team. And they're fantastic. I had one of the Impact members talking to our students the other day about her experience of different craft occupations that she was using to help manage her health conditions during lockdown. So they get involved there in lots of different ways, very much working with us and working with you as students. The team, absolutely clinical research interests. We cover all sorts of different areas of research. and our clinical backgrounds as well cover a broad range. My main background was adult social care. We have Alison Blank, who's course lead, whose main background was in mental health. Alison Double, who works in paediatrics still. She works part-time in private practice paediatrics, working with children and then working with us. Yvonne has a mix of backgrounds from mental health, homelessness, and a range of other things. Yvonne's done all sorts of interesting things and worked in Australia for a number of years. Terry predominantly works in a neuro background, but also has done things with wheelchair services and other really interesting things. So there's a real mix there. And Annabelle also has paediatric interests. She's off on maternity leave at the moment, but she has a paediatric background. And I'm just looking at the picture at the bottom of this slide. And there's Emma as well, who's a lecturer practitioner. So Emma helps us lots with our teaching, but she also works within the head injury service and neuro services in the Worcester area. So we cover a whole range of different things between us, and we're also a bunch of people who also get very interested in new topics that come up as well. As occupational therapists, I think there's always that drive to learn something new and find out different things about people. Our innovative teaching, this is me getting a bit carried away with lots of pictures on this slide, but just to give you an idea of some of the different things that students have done over the last few years. So the picture right in the middle there is some anatomy and physiology teaching and doing some body painting. Terry's done that in her anatomy and physiology teaching before now. We've also, and you can scan around the pictures and see if you can work out who might be doing this, but some students doing some physical activity, some sort of sports and balance work, thinking about falls clinics. We've got students making pictures, drawing pictures of themselves and then putting all the anatomical bits on, or we've got the bones in there, showing action potential with nerves using a balloon and a cardboard tube. It gets very creative, as well as some baking down on the bottom right corner there, and thinking about that as an occupation and being able to break that task down. So it was just a little snapshot, because we were lucky and had lots of pictures, and there were more that I wasn't able to fit on this slide. So just a little something to get you thinking again about the way in which students have been learning at the university. Learning environments, we've got a mix of different places that you would learn in. We've got Ability House, which is the picture of a house that you can see there. It's a semi-detached house on the campus, just near one of the entrances. And that inside has been, the photographs you see around the picture of the building are pictures of the rooms inside Ability House, and they have been adapted and got various pieces of equipment, for example, in there, as well as an adapted kitchen and bathroom, so that students again can think about actually how can environments be adapted in order to enable people to carry on living the life they want to live, as well as an opportunity to go and practice using some of that equipment, or as you see in the picture there, doing some hoisting on campus at university with each other. So we use those environments in lots of different ways, so that's one of the areas you might find yourselves in. We also have things such as the University Arena, which is a fantastic facility, fully accessible sports facility. Whether you're into sports or not, it's somewhere that's really interesting to go and have a look at. And there's things like when basketball's able to be playing, we can go along to match days at the arena. It's a really good atmosphere there. There's also opportunities, again, when sports are running fully, there's opportunities for students to volunteer. So you can go and watch some of the things whilst also helping out. You get some free access to things. The picture underneath that is the library, the Hive, which is, I am very biased because I really do like the library. It's a fantastic resource, and it is a public and university library. It's one of the only ones in Europe. I think it's won a lot of awards. It's a very iconic building within the Worcester skyline. It's very easy to spot, as you might imagine. If you haven't seen it already or haven't had an opportunity to be in Worcester, when you do get an opportunity to go and have a look at the Hive, it's a really interesting building. And it's very close to some of the other university buildings as well. It's in the city, so it's down the hill from St John's campus, but it's about 10 minutes from the main campus. But it is a fantastic resource, and the librarians, the subject librarians, there are 3 subject librarians for occupational therapy. They cover other courses as well, so they're not just for us. So they are pretty busy, but they are absolutely brilliant at supporting students with things like referencing, researching literature, all those kind of things. I can't sing their praise highly enough. We pick their brains all the time. So, a little bit about the course structure. It is 3 years. We always say it's very much a full-time honours degree. Even if you're not on campus for a lecture or online for a lecture, you may well be having to work on an assignment or doing some reading for the following week's teaching. It's a full, very much a full-time packed 3-year course. So just be prepared for that. It's not to scare anybody off, but just it's absolutely worth it for the end product of being an occupational therapist. But it's not a course where you'll only be having teaching for a couple of hours every week and then the rest of the time is yours. You will have lots of work to be doing. But as I say, it's all worth it. Just be prepared for that. We're a 2-semester course, which basically means so semesters are a bit different to school terms. So the course starts in September and it runs through to end of May, beginning of June. It varies a little bit for each year group. And the semester 1 runs from September to about the 3rd week of January. So it kind of goes over that Christmas period. And there's a couple of assessment weeks early January. And then you go into semester 2, which is the one that then runs until end of May, beginning of June. And you have 5 placements altogether over your 3 years on the course. In your first year, you have a part-time placement in the 2nd semester, and that's usually runs from a Wednesday to the Friday. So you're in the university at the beginning of the week, and then you're on placement at the second half of the week, at the end of the week. And in the 2nd year, you have placements throughout your 1st and 2nd semester, again on a part-time basis. In your 3rd year, you have 2 full-time placements, or block placements as they're often called, which is the more traditional placement setup that you'll probably find at other universities when you're looking around. We're a little bit different at Worcester, but we like to think we're a little bit innovative, where we've got part-time placements in the 1st and 2nd semester. 1st and 2nd year, I should say, sorry. But 3rd year, yeah, 2 8-week full-time placements. This is just a very quick overview of the course. I could talk about the course forever and a day, as you might have already guessed if you're listening to this talk. I'm good at talking quite a lot. But just to say, the sections, the blocks that are in blue are the ones that are uni professional. So that's occupational therapy specific teaching there. So you have your anatomy and physiology, and you also have a psychology module. There are 2 different modules there. As well as things like philosophy and practice of occupational therapy. So you get that really solid grounding in what is occupation, what do we mean by that, why is it in our title, and what's our philosophy, what's our background as occupational therapists. But you'll also see there are some green blocks as well, and those are the ones that are shared with other professional groups, predominantly with the physiotherapy students. So foundations for professional practice, for example, which our 1st years are in at the moment. That's joint with physiotherapy students, and that's learning about the fundamentals around communication, team working, ethics, professional practice. There's lots of that really essential things, learning that you need at the beginning of your 3 years of the course, so that you can make the most of your 3 years on the course and your time on placements. You also obviously see the placements in there as well. Just to say, I could talk about each of these modules in an awful lot of depth, but hopefully just the titles will start to give you a slight feel for things, and please do ask more questions about it, and we've got email addresses at the end if you want to ask anything further about those, or obviously please do ask on open days or twilight events. We have a dissertation in the final year, which is where you either have an opportunity to carry out an in-depth literature review, or you might carry out a piece of research in entirety as well. So you can choose which route you go. So through your 3 years, we sort of start off with probably more face-to-face, a bit more scaffolding there, and then gradually you're taking more and more responsibility for your learning with our support. We're always there. It's not that we abandon you completely or anything like that, but it's about making sure you're ready for when you step into your first job as a novice therapist, that you're ready to identify your learning needs and be able to then action how you're going to meet those. So we make sure you're all ready to go for that. Thinking about assessments, is it something that people are often a bit worried about, a bit anxious about perhaps? Anybody who doesn't like exams will probably have swiftly spotted on this slide that it says we don't have any exams, which is true. We don't. We have lots of ways in which we assess people, because we know people learn in different ways, and also people perform differently in assessments. So from essays, presentations, practical assessments, as well as oral vivas, portfolios. Obviously, you're assessed on placement as well. So there's lots of different ways in which we assess people. Now, also, I just wanted to put a little bit of information in here, as it does seem to be in the news quite a bit at the moment. And this PowerPoint you may be watching this at the beginning of our academic year, so early in October. You might be watching it further through the academic year, and obviously the situation with COVID will be changing as it has been for the last few months already, for the last 6 months. But it was just to acknowledge the fact that obviously we are teaching in a slightly different environment at the moment, because we are having to make sure that we are safe and our students are as safe as possible as well. And obviously for any practice partners and people, any service users, etc., are also, we're not putting anybody at any risk. But what I just wanted to highlight really is that COVID-19, as I'm sure many of you have already experienced, has thrown out lots of new challenges, lots of different problems, lots of things that we have to think about doing things differently, or learning new ways of doing things, with remembering to wash our hands, put our face masks on, whatever it might be. But what it might sound a little bit corny, but occupational therapists are problem solvers. So as a team, and I have to say our students have been fantastic as well at being able to work out actually how are we going to do this, how are we going to teach our students and make sure that they can effectively learn what they need to learn to be occupational therapists. Our skills with IT have increased rapidly, but students have embraced the challenge and have been brilliant at doing that, and have given us feedback so that we can work on things and make sure that we make things still as engaging and interesting and as effective as we can for learning. At the moment, this is being recorded in October 2020. So say you might be watching this a bit further down the line. But at the moment, our third years have gone out on placement. They're halfway through their first 8-week placement of the third year. Our second years are having teaching at the moment, and their placement is a little bit further down the line. And our first years have all started. Our 50 new first years have started and are busy learning online, but also for face-to-face. So as I've put on there, is blended teaching is our approach at the moment. And there are some things that we have definitely learned by using technology more effectively than we did before. There are some things that would benefit from continuing to be done. For example, if we're live streaming a lecture, recording it so that students can look back on it later. It seems a bit simple and like we probably should have been doing that before. We didn't do it enough before, so we have learned. So there are definitely some positives that will come out of this, as well as all the challenges that everybody has had to face around the country. But as I say, we are definitely still doing face-to-face teaching. I saw some students on Friday for some small group work, and I know my colleagues are seeing some students for small group things today as well. We have live streamed sessions, so whilst I was teaching some students in a class, other students were joining us virtually, and we also have speakers joining us virtually from around the country. We've had some pre-recorded talks, so students can watch them in their own time, but then we talk about those in a live online discussion. Practical small group sessions face to face, but we also are able to facilitate small group sessions online as well. Online collaboration, absolutely. There's all sorts of things going on, but what I can definitely reassure is that we are continuing to strive to ensure that our students are getting the best experience they possibly can, and whilst at university learning to be occupational therapists. And the other thing, just to say as well, if you are thinking about occupational therapy, and you know this is something you've already been thinking about, not only is it a fantastic profession, but actually they are greatly needed. We've always known occupational therapists are greatly needed, but at the moment, in relation to COVID, where they're talking a lot about the long-term rehab requirements for people that have experienced the long-term after effects of COVID, occupational therapists are definitely part of that team. Those teams of people that will be supporting people that have experienced the longer effects from COVID-19. So it's a greatly needed profession at any time and in many different settings, but I would say that there's this added element at the moment where we're even more needed. So you're choosing a profession that's definitely a bunch of problem solvers, but definitely needed. And just to say as well, I know I've already mentioned it, but just to reiterate that placements are continuing. At the height of the pandemic, in March, I'm trying to think, time's gone quickly, our third years were out on placement, and some of them are working in COVID wards. Some have virtual placements. There's all sorts of ways in which things are being facilitated to carry on in an effective way. And the students are hopefully having a great time. They certainly seem to be when I see them. So hopefully that will be the sense you get if you get an opportunity to talk to any of our ambassadors. Okay. So practice education, just to say placements, you have placements under the supervision of an occupational therapy staff, under OT staff from practice, so not necessarily a teaching team, but you have OT supervision. You may be on a site where there isn't an OT on that site, so hence I've got a picture at the bottom there of some sheep, because we do have some students going out to settings, sort of horticultural settings, things like that, where there might not be an OT on site, but you still have supervision from a local practice partner, as well as supervision from somebody on site. Majority of the placements will have an occupational therapist on site, and the pictures, there are lots and lots of different places, much as that earlier slide showed all the different areas that OTs might work in. Obviously placements can be in lots of different areas as well. So I just wanted to put a few pictures on there to kind of get you thinking again. 5 placements, you have to have a minimum of 1,000 hours in practice in order to register as occupational therapists once you graduate. So we ensure that you have the required hours and a bit more to account for any days off, that kind of thing. I've already said that they're half-time in the first and second year and full-time in your third year. Requirements of practice education, you are required to travel to placement. Obviously it's handy if you have a car, but we understand that not everybody has access to a car, but it can be useful because we are in quite a lot of rural areas for our placements. Herefordshire, Worcestershire, Gloucestershire, and it says and beyond, absolutely. Birmingham, we have quite lots of placements in Birmingham and surrounding areas of Birmingham. So there's quite a big patch that we cover, that I'm sure some of you will be aware if you're from the West Midlands area, that actually some of those areas are quite rural, which is why we sometimes say that actually a car can be handy. However, if you have a car, don't always assume that you're going to find yourselves out in the sticks, because actually some local placements also require car drivers just by the nature of the job. However, there are also a whole lot of placements that people access by public transport very successfully. We need to make sure that we give you the mix of experience when you're here at the university to equip you best for when you graduate. So we don't just look at can you drive a car and where is the placement. We look at those kind of things, or can you get public transport, or have you got somebody you can stay with locally. They're important things, but actually a very, very important part is what experience have you had so far and what experience do you need. So that's kind of one of the main drivers really. We expect professional behaviour and communication. I'm sure you're not surprised by that. There are uniforms that for some placements, and we expect you to wear those, but obviously to present smartly for placements where there's no uniform as well. And you have a reflective portfolio that's the assessment, but you're assessed on placement in a pass-fail, or you can receive a certificate of excellence if you've done particularly well, and then you submit a reflective portfolio, so it's reflecting on your placement experiences, thinking about particular areas of it, create a portfolio, and that's the bit that gets the grade that is part of your year's grades. Highlights, well, placements are obviously a highlight. There's part-time, full-time experiences. Sorry, I've said that already a couple of times. We have things like the student-led clinic, which is down at the McClellan Centre on the city campus, which is a fantastic opportunity. The students there, physio and occupational therapy, sometimes working together, sometimes uni professional, depending on what the projects are that they're working on. And they've done some brilliant projects working with members of the local public and providing services down there. Contemporary placements, I said about the horticultural settings. I'm thinking of that because I was talking to some students yesterday about it. But there's a whole range of contemporary settings and some really, really exciting and innovative areas that the placements team are developing for future placements as well. Our therapy placements team is led by Terry Grant, Senior Lecturer in Occupational Therapy, and then we have Becky Lees, who's a full-time physio lecturer, Latoya Neil and Annabelle, who are both employed under the occupational therapy contract, part-time together, but they create a full-time post. So there's 3 people working together to develop some really exciting placement settings for people. They're always coming up with new things. I'm always stunned at what they managed to develop, such really interesting opportunities. Already mentioned the geographical aspects of it. And there's very much a focus on leadership, both at university, also thinking about it on placements though as well, because and developing coaching skills, but actually having that leadership aspect when you get out and qualify as an occupational therapist is really important. So we want to make sure we've equipped you with those skills. We're obviously fully validated by the Royal College of Occupational Therapists as our professional body. We have to be in order to run the course. And that also means that we are get recognition from the World Federation of Occupational Therapists. That's another, you can Google World Federation of Occupational Therapists if you want, and that's another way in which to find out even more about occupational therapy and what's happening globally. We're approved by the Health and Care Professions Council, and they are our regulatory body, so we have to be registered with them in order to practice when you graduate, and for us as qualified occupational therapists. So they're another organisation that's worth a Google, worth a look. Placements wise as well, there is also there have been overseas opportunities in the 3rd year in previous years, and that's something that is very much still being supported and developed, obviously bearing in mind what's happening in the world as to how whether that can go ahead this year. But in future years, absolutely, the plan is to continue with overseas placements. And Latoya, who's been particularly looking at those, a little while ago was saying that she was in discussions with South Africa, Mexico, India, as well as places that we've already had running in Vietnam and Denmark. So there's a very exciting opportunity in 3rd year of study. Academic and pastoral support systems. Every student has a personal academic tutor, which is one of us from the occupational therapy team, but there's also excellent support within the university for pastoral support and academic support. First Point is the main area, the first point of call that we send students to quite often, whether they've got questions about finance or actually whether it's that we think perhaps they would benefit from some more input, such as counselling or other support systems for whatever their situation might be. So essentially there is fantastic support here. So we encourage students now, having welcomed the new first years very recently, I kept finding myself saying, just talk to us. At the end of the day, we are here to listen and we're here to support. And even if as personal academic tutors it's something that we can't help with, I'm not very good at knowing all the finance answers, for example, we usually know where to send people so you can find out an answer. The picture here as well on the slide is of 3 of the occupational therapists who've all graduated now and are out working as qualified occupational therapists, with one of the dogs that comes in. We've had therapy dogs have previously been coming in to First Point so that students can have a bit of downtime, have a cup of tea and a chat, or just a cup of tea if you don't fancy chatting, and then go and see the dogs, because a lot of people move away from home and actually miss their pets back home. So it's an opportunity to go and meet the therapy dogs. And so they're always looking for opportunities at the university to support students in the best way. And that's an ever-developing thing as well. Home or away, we have a mix of students both living in halls, some students who moved to the area and are living in student accommodation or private rented accommodation in Worcester itself, and other people that are commuting in from home. We have a real mix within occupational therapy, which I think is great, because it brings all sorts of different viewpoints and people coming from different aspects of life. Apologies, I've left that in there saying you can look at the accommodations today. If you are watching this as part of an open day experience, you will likely be offered the opportunity to go on site to book a self-guided tour to go and have a look at the accommodation. But there are other opportunities as well, and also don't forget, I think on the website there should be some virtual tours of some of the halls as well, so you can get an idea of what they look like. I would just mention we have quite a lot of commuter students, and there are places on the university campus to study. So if you are commuting in, you should be able to go and put yourself somewhere so you can study if you're going to do a bit of work before coming to a lecture, for example, or going to do some group work. And a quote there I had from a student: commuting can have its benefits. If you get into uni early, you miss the traffic and you can have your breakfast at university and get some work done. the canteen does have some very nice breakfast on offer. And if you want to leave after rush hour traffic, you can get work done at the university before you get home. So the university do make sure there are places that you can study, and the Hive equally. So some of those you have to book, and it also varies obviously depending on the current situation with COVID, for example. But absolutely, we have places to study, and some of our first years have already been using them. Age is only a number. I always like to mention this as well because we do, again, I think it's another really lovely thing about occupational therapy students is that we have lots of students coming in at 18 who've done A-levels or BTECs, but we also have a lot of students who haven't discovered occupational therapy until a bit later on. So might be coming having completed previous degree or having done other studies, but then also worked as OT assistants, for example, or rehab workers, or perhaps been in a different field, but have then found out about occupational therapy and are actually looking at a career change. So don't be put off. If you're watching this as a potential mature student, then absolutely you would not be alone. Again, another quote there is, do not be intimidated by the content and the amount of work, as all the staff are extremely supportive and have delivered the course content really well. That's from a third year mature student. It sounds a little bit boastful again, doesn't it? But I'm very pleased that they found that we were supportive. Oh, and another quote there from a first year. I was so nervous starting university being a mature student, but everyone was so nice and there is so much support around. Make friends and chat to everyone in the group, not just people your age. You learn loads. I think, as I've written on that slide, I think that goes for whatever age you'll come to university. That's a sensible advice. Finance, I've just mentioned I'm not very good at answering the finance questions. So again, there are some 3 links there that you might want to make a note of if you've got questions about finance. So Office for Students, again, that website I mentioned earlier, they have information on funding. Councillor Dean's, the Funding Clinic, that's a really useful website as well to have a look at for the latest information around funding for allied health courses, including occupational therapy, and the NHS Business Services Authority. So just wanted to touch on that and just refer to them in case that's useful for anyone. Extracurricular opportunities, there's all sorts of things there. I should have had a slide with lots more pictures on, but there's a couple of pictures there. Some students that were helping out at the London Marathon a year or so ago. Also a student receiving their Gold Worcester Award. The Worcester Award is obviously specific to the University of Worcester, but it recognises things like volunteering that people have carried out, amongst all sorts of other things. It's a fantastic extra thing to have on your CV ready for when you are looking for jobs. When you finish your 3 years. So that's something that you can obviously find out more about at the university, and something we like to promote, but it gives extra opportunities and students do all sorts of interesting things. There's also an OT society which are very active at the moment. Every first Thursday of the month they are doing an OT OT cafe, OT chat on a Thursday evening virtually, and they're getting external speakers. They're also going to be thinking of doing things for OT Week, which is coming up in November. It's a really active group, which they're doing some fantastic work at the moment. So there's lots of different ways you can get involved outside of the day-to-day university things. So some top tips for admissions. Have a look at the academic entry criteria on the website. Do your homework. I said at the beginning, go away and have a read around occupational therapy, which I'm sure lots of you watching this will have already done, which is fantastic. But read around it. We want to see that people know as much as they can know about occupational therapy before you start training, because we don't want anybody starting then having a bit of a shock that occupational therapists don't just work in hospitals, but actually they do work in lots of those other areas as well. So read around, have a look at get a feeling for the depth and breadth of the profession, so that you're ready to then articulate that if you get through for admissions interview. One other thing, work experience there. If you can get work experience, fantastic. We know it can be a challenge to get work experience, but even if it's a case of seeing if perhaps an occupational therapist is happy to talk to you for an hour, or maybe not an hour, but talk to you for a little while on the phone, so you can find a bit more about their particular area of practice and what they do. If you were able to do that with 2 or 3 ATs working in different areas, that already gives you lots of really rich information about what they do and helps you again to get a sense of, is this the career for me? But also other work experience you might do if you've been helping younger children at school perhaps. You can show that you communicate and support children of different, or younger people of different ages to develop and grow and learn. It might be that you've been working in a shop for a while. Actually, there'll be all sorts of things there, like team working, perhaps managing difficult situations with customers, having responsibility for certain things. Think about any experiences you've had. What kind of skills do we want and abilities do we want to see in potential occupational therapists? And then marry those two things up. So actually, if your job involved lots of problem solving, fantastic. That's what we do lots of as occupational therapists. So tell us about that and tell us why you think that will make you a good occupational therapist. Good communication skills, absolutely, really, really important. Working with a variety of people, values required of health and social care professionals, leadership skills. There's just some different things to think about, and think about how you could demonstrate to us that you've got some of those things that you could bring with you to be an occupational therapy student and eventually an occupational therapist. The format of the interviews for 2020-21, we have moved our interviews online, and they are usually joint with physiotherapy students. And there are two comparatively short group tasks, and then a very short one-to-one interview as well. And as I say, that will be taking place online. We have done online interviews for sort of latter part of the last academic year, with quite a lot of group interviews. Students seem to chat away online much more than we initially anticipated, which is fantastic. So it was an interesting opportunity to try it out, because we usually do it face to face, but actually it's translated into an online format really well. It also means you don't have travel costs, and you can join from around the country, which is a really good opportunity. So there's always benefits to these things. Top tips. I always think this top tip is quite a tricky one. Relax and be yourself. It's very easy for us to say. We know people are nervous, so if you are nervous at interview, completely natural. We understand, so don't worry. We realise that. But as much as you can, we try to make it as relaxed and welcoming as we can for an interview, and so that you can, as much as you can, relax and show us you, because that's what we want to see. We want to see you and what you're going to be bringing to the course. Do research on the course, so as well as finding out about occupational therapy, have a look about the course at the university, the profession, all these different aspects. So again, you can make sure that you're making the right decision for you, as well as showing us that you've been doing that homework. And sell yourself. Why would you make a good occupational therapist? It's something we all find hard to do, selling ourselves and saying these kind of things, but try and do your best so that we can really see that at interview. If you don't say anything at all, it's much harder for us to tell. Office of places are subject to satisfactory enhanced disclosure and borrowing service checks, as well as occupational health clearance. That goes for any courses across the country for occupational therapy or any allied health courses. So that's nothing specific to, or special to us. That's something that every student coming onto one of the courses will need to be cleared for as well. If you have anything that you think would come up on a disclosure and borrowing service check, we would always ask you to let us know, even if it was many moons ago and you're not necessarily thinking it will come up. Best to let us know, and then it's not a surprise if it does appear. You can follow us on social media. We have active Twitter page and Facebook page, so please do find us on there, hunt us down, join us on there. The Instagram page is a little bit sporadic because that's one I manage, and I don't always remember to take pictures. So, but please do find us on Instagram as well, and then you can get to see some of the things we're posting about what students are up to at the moment, as well as perhaps links to things that are happening nationally or globally relating to occupational therapy and other aspects of health and social care. And I think that's it. So thank you very much for bearing with me through this talk. I know it can be hard to listen to somebody talking away for so long, but I hope you found it helpful. Please do get in touch if you've got any questions. Alison Blank is course lead, and I am Sophie Smith, the admissions tutor. Also, there's the email address there for our admissions team. So please do get in touch if you've got any questions, and hopefully if you've been watching this in order to then join in with one of the chats for an open day. Obviously, it'll be one of the occupational therapy team will be there to answer questions, usually alongside one of our student ambassadors from the occupational therapy student team. So please do pose any questions to them as well if you have that opportunity. But if not, please do send us some emails if you've got any questions. We'd be more than happy to try and help answer any of those questions for you. So thank you very much for your time.